Hello again. According to a new book, it's a disease called affluenza, the pursuit of cash and possessions, which doesn't necessarily lead to happiness. So is wealth good for you? Joining me now is the author of that book, the clinical psychologist Oliver James, the author of Affluenza. He's in Oxfordshire. And also on the line is the former Labour advisor turned psychotherapist Derek Draper. He joins us from North London. Welcome to you both. Oliver James, are you really saying that wealth isn't good for you?
I'm not saying that wealth per se is bad for you. I'm saying that it's your values that are crucial. If you place a high value on money, possessions, appearances, physical and social, and fame, you're statistically significantly, in studies from 14 different nations, more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, addictions and personality disorder. And that's an amazing fact. In other words, if you place too high a value on what you might call career goals, you are actually at much greater risk of being mentally ill. And the most extraordinary finding in my book, which is based on the WHO study, is that the English-speaking nations, which are more affluenza-stricken, are twice as likely to suffer from mental illness compared with mainland Western European ones. So a quarter of people in the English-speaking world, 1/4, suffered a mental illness in the last 12 months, compared with only 11.5% in mainland Western Europe. That's an amazing statistic. And the basic reason that the virus makes us ill is because it causes us to conflate our needs with confected wants. If you spend your whole time motivated by rewards and praise and chasing the goals of money and possessions and so on, you simply lose track of your fundamental psychological needs for things like security, for intimacy, for looking after your children, for feeling loved and loving.
OK, let's put that to Derek Draper. I mean, Derek Draper, one of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown's proudest boasts is that the economy's gone on growing and that people have got wealthier. I mean, have they been deluding themselves?
Well, I mean, I think some people would say that it's not quite as rosy a picture as they claim in terms of the economy, but I think that it's true that we certainly haven't had a recession, have we? And we used to have recessions quite regularly. But I wonder, I think what Oliver's trying to say is that and I think other people have said, we don't have an economic recession, but we have a social recession or a cultural recession, where somehow our values and our ethical views are somehow undermining our ability to experience well-being or be happy.
Is that
I think,
right?
however, though, we need to... Do I think it's right? Well, I think it is partly right, but I also think we have to remember that some of what Oliver's saying is just about middle-class people, and that there's a lot of other people in Britain who, as well as, and I don't think they're excluded from the ideas that Oliver's saying about, you know, wanting things and appearances and all that kind of thing, but I think that they're also experiencing real old-fashioned poverty as well. So I don't think we should throw out the idea that some people probably do need more material things, as well as making a critique of materialism, which is what Oliver's trying to do.
I mean, Oliver James, you actually say that British people are more unhappy than Nigerians, who clearly live in a politically, effectively, a kleptocracy of one kind or another. I mean, are you honestly maintaining that, or is this a bit of middle-class angst?
Well, there's very good objective evidence that Nigerians are 6 times less likely to suffer from a mental illness. What I did in 2004, I went to 7 foreign nations and spent 3 weeks in each, helped by the British Council, to find people to interview. And the fundamental thing I found was, once I got out of the English-speaking world to places like Shanghai, Moscow, Copenhagen, and got talking to people, I found it was very, very different. For example, in Copenhagen, they really do have completely different gender roles, which means that the men and women share the domestic world, and the incursion, one of the fundamental problems for us here in Britain is the extent to which we've lost track of where the market should end. We should close the door against the career aspirational mentality that we have at work when we go home, and we should try looking after our children, for example, as they do in Denmark.
Exactly. I mean, I should say that you are an advisor to David Cameron's Quality of Life Commission, and amongst your ideas are that the relationship between the minimum wage and the top wage should be limited to a 5 times multiple. So that would mean a maximum salary of £115,000. You want to nationalise estate agents, and you also want to subsidise mothers to stay at home. Derek Draper, are you in favour of any of those ideas?
Well, I think that Oliver makes a series of good points that get us thinking in his book, but I think when he comes on to policy, it starts to unravel. I think the problem is that Oliver's proposals are not, I hate to sound old New Labour spin doctory, but they're not electorally viable. You're not going to get people voting for that kind of radical reform. But in a way, it's good for Oliver to be putting these things forward, because then politicians have to respond to them. And I have to say, it's interesting that Oliver's advising the Conservative Party, if he is, because it's the Labour Party that should be taking up these themes and issues. And I fear that the Conservatives are stealing a bit of a march on Labour when it comes to these lifestyle, work-life balance, cultural issues.
What about a cap on maximum earnings? A lot of talk about city bonuses. Would that be a good one for either Cameron or Gordon Brown to adopt?
You know, personally, I'm always been a little bit of an old Labour man on this. I think that you would increase taxes as far as you could without getting thrown out of office. And I think that the problem for the Labour Party is that Tony Blair was never really into doing that. I mean, my old boss, Peter Mandelson, once said that he was relaxed about people getting filthy rich. And I don't think that's common for Labour people. So yes, let's try and do something about those massive salaries at the top. But that's a very minority of people. I mean, there's not a huge amount of people earning more than £115,000 in this country. You know, whether you can really bring in huge swinging tax cuts on them, I don't know. I mean, if we said that you couldn't earn that, Adam, you'd probably go off and work in America. So that's the problem, I think.
Well, I'm staying out of this round, but Oliver James, I mean, are you serious? Do you think David Cameron is going to agree to a 100% tax at £115,000 a year?
I think it's pretty unlikely, and I've talked to New Labour as much as I have to the Tories. I'll talk to anyone who will listen. But it's interesting that Derek agrees with the idea of trying to reduce inequality. You see, he dismisses the ideas I put forward, the serious ideas. Some of them are simply to provoke thought, like nationalising a state agency, just to get people thinking. But the two serious ideas I've got are that we should massively reduce the scale of inequality, and that we should pay all parents of under 3-year-olds the national average wage. Now, people dismiss me as the sort of lunatic Panglossian, but actually there isn't any practical reason why we shouldn't do these things, and we need a fundamental change in our priorities. We need to stop worrying. We need to, for example, about whether to extend our house or put in a new kitchen. Why do we need new kitchens all the time? What do you need in a kitchen? You just need a cooker, you need a fridge, you need flat, clean services, and you've got a kitchen. You know, half the time we're worrying about consuming things that we do not need. And what I'm trying to get people to think about is what really matters in their life. And in fact, if you look at the polls, you see it's actually, electorally, would be very popular indeed. A, to cut the amount of money that the 8.8 billion that the city fat cats are taking away in their back pockets this week, their latest bonuses, and also be very popular. People say they want to spend more time with their small children, so let's have it on.
All right, well, let's see whether David Cameron takes some of your ideas. Thank you very much indeed, Oliver James and Derek Draper. This is Sky News on our website, sky.com/news.